What's good, y'all? It's your boy Ross back at again with another video. So we're gonna check out the car market is about to collapse. This has been an ongoing thing for the past few years. People are not buying cars, especially brand new ones. The prices on these cars, the markups that these dealerships put on these vehicles is a crazy amount for a little amount of actual worthy upgrades or, additions to the car. And, just people don't have the money for it. I mean, the economy is kind of rough right now. People are trying to do whatever they can to make ends meet, and they don't have enough money to, afford these cars. A lot of people are not being able to make their payments, their monthly payments on cars, and cars are getting repossessed at a higher rate than it has been in a while. It's just really unfortunate, So we're gonna check out just what's going on right now when it comes to purchasing cars. Appreciate all love support. Let's get right into this one, man.
The car market is beginning to collapse. After a short-lived sales spike earlier this spring as buyers rush to beat Trump's new tariffs,
Customers are in a panic. There's a frenzy going on. They want to buy cars before the tariffs hit and prices go up.
U.S. auto sales have plunged by nearly 10% in the month of May, the sharpest drop in over a year.
Damn.
This isn't just a demand problem. The average new vehicle now costs around $50,000, and even a 3-year-old used car goes for about $30,000.
Yep.
Loan delinquencies are rising, repossessions have ticked up, and now automakers are staring down a market that simply can't sustain these prices. But remember, all of this has really happened before Trump's new auto tariffs have gone into full effect.
Be honest with me.
Yes.
They will start going up at some point. Is it in
absolutely.
June? When do we see industry prices, not just for Toyota, but everybody, start to go up?
You're absolutely correct. 25% tariffs are unsustainable. Nobody has profit margins like that, so everyone will have to eventually.
So when do we see prices go up?
Well, you've already seen some of them go up. You've already seen.
But widespread, would you say June?
Absolutely. I think when you get to June or the end of June at least,
Damn.
you're going to see people have to. They're going to feel the pressure and they're going to have to do it.
When you couple those with the new steel and aluminum tariffs, which have recently doubled,
we're going to bring it from 25% to 50%, the tariffs on steel into the United States of America.
well, this whole thing begins to look a lot worse, not just for consumers, but also for these auto companies. So let's talk about why this is happening and what the collapse could look like next. Even as headlines focus on sticker prices, it's also the financing side of the car market that shows just how stretched consumers have become. Buyers are now taking on longer, riskier loans just to make monthly payments manageable. Nearly 1 in 5 new car buyers are signing 84-month loans, locking them.
Jesus. I'm going to say the growing share of 7-year auto loans points to the persistent affordability pressures in the car market. 7-year? Woo! 84-month loans? That's crazy. But that's how people are able to make the monthly payments as low as possible. That's insane. So you're going to end up paying twice as much as the car is originally worth. That's crazy.
Themselves into 7 years of car debt. And the average loan term has now climbed to 68 months for new cars. With used cars being at 67.2 months, according to LendingTree. But these longer terms only mask the growing problem of unaffordability. Interest rates have risen sharply, with the average APR roughly around 7% for new vehicles and almost 12% for used vehicles, making even basic financing expensive. For subprime borrowers, the situation is obviously much worse. Used car loan rates now range from 19 to 21.5%, while new car loans hit 50.
God damn. Damn. So if your credit score is in this range, I mean, you trying to get a new car, that's going to be crazy. You try to get a used car, oh my God. Jesus, bro. Whew. That's wild, bro.
15 to 20%, depending on your credit score, of course. These interest levels tack on thousands in financing costs, inflating the total outlay far beyond the vehicle's base price. As a result, loan performance is deteriorating across the board. 30-day auto delinquencies are approaching 4%, Subprime borrowers are struggling the most, with 60-day delinquency rates reaching over 6% in December of 2024, which was a record high, while broader 60-day delinquencies now exceed 1.5%. These are levels not seen since the financial crisis in 2008. And meanwhile, while all of that is going on, total auto loan debt has exploded to $1.65 trillion.
Whoa. Americans owe $1.65 trillion in auto debt. That is ridiculous. The overall vehicle debt has increased 73% between quarter four of 2014 to quarter four of 2024. Jesus! Oh my God. Boys ain't paying off their cars. It's just Jesus, bro. That's a huge leap from $955 billion to $1.6 trillion. That's insane, dog.
Which now exceeds student loan debt. And
wow. Mortgages is at 69. Auto loans is right here. And student loans, which it's more than student loans now. That's crazy.
Accounts for over 9% of all U.S. consumer debt. In the last quarter of 2024, Americans originated $175 billion in new auto loans. This was a massive jump from $125 billion just a decade ago. And the average monthly payment for a vehicle is insane, with it now being $742 a month for a new car and $525 a month for a used car, pushing many households to their breaking point.
Yeah.
Now, in early 2025, the U.S. auto market was hit with a 1-2 punch. The 25% tariff on imported vehicles went into effect on April 3rd. This was on top of a 25% steel and aluminum tariff. Now, these policies triggered a short-term surge in car sales as consumers scrambled to buy before the expected price hikes. In March, auto sales soared to the highest level in 4 years, with GM reporting a 17% year-over-year increase. As a result, dealer inventory tightened fast, dropping more than 10%, and average days supply fell from 91 to around 70 days. But by May, the demand seemed to vanish. Monthly sales fell nearly 10%, dropping to a 15.6 million annualized pace, the sharpest decline in over a year, and one of the largest monthly drops since the early pandemic shutdowns. Now, importantly, the import side of the market also fell off a cliff, as vehicle imports via sea plunged by 72.3% year over year in May, with just 3,600 vehicles arriving at U.S. ports that month, down from over 13,000 the year prior.
Damn.
But this isn't just about finished cars, because the 50% steel and aluminum tariffs could increase the cost of a new vehicle anywhere between $400 on the low end to $3,000 on the higher end, squeezing manufacturers and consumers even further. Ford suspended its 2025 earnings guidance in May. They also warned of a $1.5 billion hit to pre-tax earnings due to these new tariffs. GM went so far to withdraw its full-year guidance and paused its stock buyback program, citing the uncertain cost environment. In short, the tariffs sparked a brief panic-buying surge, followed by a steep drop in demand, disrupting imports, rising production costs, and growing pressure on automakers to try to protect margins in this softening market. And despite the nationalist rhetoric behind these policies, even the so-called American-made cars aren't immune. One of the most common talking points in support of these tariffs is this idea that Americans can simply avoid these price hikes by just buying American. But that idea is a fairy tale. I mean, literally. Because even the most American car brands aren't truly American-made.
Nope.
Take the Ford F-150, often held up as one of the most patriotic vehicles on the road. According to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, only 32% of its components are US or Canadian made. That means 70% of the truck, from electronics to transmission parts, is sourced internationally.
Yeah.
And it's not alone. It's just one of many vehicles that...
That's the thing. Like, people have this imaginary idea that, you know, if we just support American made, this would all be, you know, the issue would be solved. No, it won't. Because guess what? A lot of the stuff in these vehicles are still made in overseas and imported. A lot of the technologies and the engine components, they're made overseas. They're not made in the States. So guess where they got to get it from? They got to get it from other companies to get it shipped, get it manufactured and shipped over here. So either way, they still going to have to cover the cost of the tariffs. Most of the things that we have now that we use actively, it's not American made. It's usually made overseas because it's cheaper to make it over there and then bring it over here. That's literally what happens. So, and the same thing happened with vehicles.
That falls into a similar category. But even if we take Tesla, which is a company that proudly touts its US factories, they still can't avoid the global supply chains.
Nope.
The Model Y was actually ranked the most American-made car in 2023 by Cars.com. Yet it still contains around 30% foreign parts.
Yeah.
But no matter the model, all of these Teslas or most EVs still rely heavily on battery cells and key materials that come from China and South Korea. In fact, while final assembly may happen in the US, the components, particularly lithium-ion batteries, are deeply embedded in foreign supply chains. The truth is, no mass market vehicle sold in the US is 100% American-made.
Nope.
According to the NHTSA's own data, the average US assembled vehicle contains about 50% foreign parts. And while this whole topic has a ton of nuance that generally isn't even brought into consideration, it can be very difficult to get the true origin of every single component that goes into a vehicle. Because a certain car part could be made up of several other components that are sourced from all over the world.
Yeah.
But if it gets assembled somewhere else, it could say it was made from that country, technically speaking. The takeaway here is the vast majority of parts that don't come from the US are subject to these tariffs, at least for now.
In this specific dealership, about 30% of the inventory is assembled in the US, but parts come from all over the world, so all of them are going to be affected by the tariffs. This is a $77,000 MSRP car, so a 25% increase on this is approximately $20,000.
And when tariffs hit imports, whether it's the finished cars or these other components that go inside them, it doesn't just affect every new vehicle on the lot. It ripples into manufacturing, auto repair, used cars, marketing, on and on and on.
Damn.
And lastly, tariffs don't just raise the price of foreign brands. They raise the cost of everything, even the vehicles that appear to be mostly domestic. But this collapse right now isn't just about cars. I mean, the unraveling of the car market isn't an isolated event. It's a canary in the coal mine for the broader US economy. Consumers are struggling.
Yeah.
The University of Michigan's Consumer Sentiment Index remained at some of its lowest levels since 1952, highlighting persistent financial unease despite temporary trade truce headlines. Meanwhile, as I mentioned earlier, with auto loan delinquencies rising, this doesn't feel like it's just a personal hardship. It sounds more like a systemic risk. With $1.65 trillion in outstanding car loans, rising defaults don't only hurt borrowers. They threaten financial institutions across the spectrum.
Yeah.
Banks, credit unions, auto lenders, and investors in asset-backed securities. Now, if these losses continue to mount, lenders might tighten credit, making financing harder, not just for cars, but for everything from home appliances to small businesses.
But when you talk about bargains, we're nowhere. Gone are the days when you're going to see widespread 0% financing, big discounts on vehicles. The automakers are being more judicious about production, and because they've got to sit there and say, how do we adjust to the cost that we're paying? We don't want to say we're passing it along to the consumer, so we do have to pass it along in some fashion. You're just not going to see the deals that you once saw.
On the
those deals are about to be, gone, with the past. Like, people, these institutions, these banks, these companies, they got to cover the cost. And they're not going to be willing to give out deals as much because guess what? People are not being able to pay their own, car loans consistently without it, going into, like past 30 days due or 60 days due. And, that all comes down to people not being able to make as much. People not being able to get the proper amount of funds to even just maintain the car itself or to just pay the car note. Everything is going up. Food, paying for food for a family is very expensive now. Damn near is more expensive to get groceries for your family than eating out every day. It's gotten to that point. Cost of living is going up all over the board. So it just becomes a thing where like these companies, these dealerships and stuff, they're not going to be handing out any, great deals like that in the future if this keeps up, because I mean, they're not going to be able to. They got to try to make a profit themselves.
Manufacturing front, this stress is already hitting home. The auto industry supports roughly 10 million jobs across factories, suppliers, and dealerships in the US. And in auto-dependent states like Michigan, Ohio, Kentucky, Alabama, and Tennessee, plant slowdowns and job cuts ripple through local economies.
Yeah.
Gabriel Ehrlich, director of the University of Michigan's Economic Forecasting Group, says tariffs will likely lead to a decline in auto industry employment in the next 5 years.
We're estimating a decline of about 1.8% in domestic auto production. And if that passed through proportionally to employment in Michigan's auto sector, it would come to about 3,300 job losses.
But Ehrlich says each lost auto job brings with it around 3 jobs in other sectors, bringing the total losses to 13,300. The analyst estimated domestic manufacturers to produce 190,000 fewer vehicles per year due to a combination of economic factors.
Automakers such as Ford and GM are pulling back on EV investment, citing softening demand and rising costs. Now, while the EV hype might be fading for some other reasons, tariffs make this whole situation worse. While often touted as a tool to revive domestic manufacturing, the last round of steel tariffs in Trump's first term ended up reportedly costing 75,000 manufacturing jobs just to create 1,000 jobs in the steel industry. So while tariffs on cars and other components will raise costs across the board without guaranteeing job gains, a lot of the impacts from these tariffs haven't even been fully accounted for in the economy yet. So where is all of this going? Well, I think the collapse of the car market is a warning signal, because when Americans become too stretched to buy, whether that's a new or used vehicle, lending tightens, factories slow, and entire regions risk spiraling downward. The system as a whole is showing itself to be incredibly fragile, and what's happening in the auto industry might just be the first domino. But if I'm wrong, and this is just what a strong economy looks like, well, try to imagine what happens when it actually weakens. Now, if you enjoyed this video and you want to learn more about why 60% of Americans can't afford a minimum quality of life,
bro, this is crazy, bro. This is definitely informative. I'm gonna go ahead and like the video. Let y'all see the channel. Establish context, man. Definitely go check them out. I definitely wanted to check this video out because we have been checking out a few videos involving the car market and people not buying cars, and it's not feasible for a lot of individuals because of how much the car payments are. The average car payment now is like $700 a month, and not everybody can afford that. You feel me? So it's just the times we living in. Hopefully things can get better, because at the end of the day, a lot of times you may need a vehicle to get to point A to point B, to get to your job. Maybe there isn't a bus or a train that runs in your area to get to where you need to be. And, even when it comes to the used car market now, even they are, in that aspect, it's a lot that goes into that. You still have to have a decent amount of money. So it's just really unfortunate, man. But comment down below. Let me know how you guys feel about all this information that was provided to us in this particular video. Appreciate all the love, support you guys shown on the channel. Road to 20K. I'll see you on the next one. Peace.